Okay, hello and welcome to our PlusSpec for SketchUp Get Good Fast webcast series. My name is Drew Povey and I'm your host. Now, the reason we're doing these webcasts is because although recorded tutorials are great, they are somewhat static and impersonal. These webcasts are live and they give you the benefit of asking questions and hopefully to get answers right away. We can also spend a bit more time going into topics at a deeper level. And if you're new to PlusSpec or don't even have it yet, there's no better way to truly take a look. We would like to give special thanks to our platinum sponsor, Brickworks Building Products. Brickworks Building Products are one of Australia's largest building product companies with a product range that includes bricks, pavers, stone, masonry blocks, precast concrete panels, and the list goes on. They lead through style and innovation, creating beautiful products that last forever. We'd also like to thank our gold sponsors. Builders Profits provides coaching and training to the building industry, no matter where you live in the world. Dinsel is a lightweight, stay-in-place formwork system, which when filled with concrete produces a load-bearing, fire-resistant structural element. And Stramet is a leading Australian manufacturer of roll-formed steel building products. So in today's webcast, we're going to be talking about how you can model and calculate spaces or areas. And obviously how you can also use this to design to your boundaries or your setbacks and to really showcase or demonstrate your building envelope. We know that that can be quite tricky when you're dealing with local authorities or whoever you need to deal with to get your project approved. And if you can visualize things in 3D, you'll see that it makes a ton of difference. So we're going to be demonstrating the space tool to you. Many of you probably haven't used it yet. It is a fairly recent update, but with it, you can capture all of that important information. So the square feet or the square meters of your rooms, the overall floor areas, your site area, your outdoor areas, and so forth. So we're going to show you how you can also, as I said earlier, use it beyond just calculating square feet and square meters, but to better explain how your project might be bending the rules, like for your height, or how certain parts of your building are taking up more space than they should be. And even though we aren't major fans of estimating from square feet or square meters, we will finish by showing you how you can still create quick feasibility studies using these, because we know that in some projects you need to be able to just quickly mass out overall floor areas and so forth, just to make sure the project is feasible from the beginning, and you need to do that very, very quickly. And that being said, I just really want to emphasize that we hate when people estimate or do feasibilities from square meter and square feet, especially when it's beyond that very, very basic level, because we think it costs the industry so much, both the architects and designers and also the builders. Anyway, we will be showing you it and we'll be jumping through everything that we're going to discuss in here. Now, as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the questions box and we will get to them as soon as possible. All right, so I've just realized that my screen was paused, so I apologize about that, but obviously we can come back to this at a later point in time. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to jump into PlusSpec for SketchUp. Okay, and I'm going to go into the all scene. This is just a very, very basic model that we've been using to demonstrate some 2D drawings. If you attended our last webcast where we did the customer success on 2D, you will remember this model. It is very basic, so don't get too caught or stuck in that. But it has been set up, right? So we've started modeling, we've put a little bit of information in there, not a hell of a lot. I mean, it does have some details, etc. So if I go into my layers, you can see that we even have the parapet detail that's been caught or captured and brought off to the side, and it's also linked into the model to make sure that it works. And that's something that we will be discussing more and more in future webcasts too. So how you can use PlusSpec for SketchUp to go beyond just a traditional drafting and actually make sure that your 3D details are captured within the model, because everyone understands 3D details and very few people understand 2D, or at least it requires deciphering. But anyway, I can, for example, because I've generated the PlusSpec for SketchUp scenes, I have the majority of my floor plans and my elevations and my sections. They've all been done for me. And I also have these 3D modeling scenes. So the all scene, structure off, roof off. And obviously these scenes aren't really for your 2D drawings. They're just so that you can understand your model, peel it back, and manipulate it a lot easier when you're in the 3D environment. So although I've got a good understanding of space because I'm seeing it in true 3D, and I'm understanding how things look and read, and even how shadows, etc., are reacting to those rooms and spaces, obviously I really want to be able to capture that in my 3D model and also my 2D model. So there is a space tool, and it's the little icon that's a square. It's sitting between the stair and the roof tool. So I'm going to click on it, and we're going to open the space tool. Now, before we jump in, I'm actually going to do a poll. So we're going to do a couple of polls throughout this session. So I'm going to just quickly ask everyone that's in attendance today, do you dimension from structure to structure or finish to finish? So do you dimension from structure to structure or finish to finish? This is a really interesting one. If everyone can start voting and putting it in there, that would be awesome. The reason that we're collating a lot of this information is because we really want to start digging into industry and what we're doing and discussing what we can do to fix things and understanding if there are issues and concerns and all those kinds of things. So this would really help us give feedback. So I'm about to end this poll. About 88% of you have voted. So there's a couple of you that are missing, maybe one more. So I'm going to close the poll now. I think that's good enough. So close poll. And I'm going to share the results with everyone. So we have 90% of you have actually voted that you dimension structure to structure, and we have 10% of you that have voted finish to finish. For those of you who voted finish to finish, I'd love to hear why you are. So if you could send me or type it in the questions box, I'll get to it at a later date, and maybe we'll come back to you at a later time. Thank you, everyone, for participating in that poll. All right, let's jump back into the actual session. Now, I'm in the 3D, and I'm just going to quickly show you the actual space tool here. So I've opened it. I'm in space tool room quantities, and I have the ability to also associate a height. So again, we have a lot of people here from the US and Canada today. I am using metric, so obviously you'd be using feet and inches, but just ignore what I'm using. So I might just do this at, say, 20, whatever. And I'm going to actually do this one as a bedroom. So bedroom, and I'm going to call it in the room area and label my whatever I want it to be called. So this one might be master bed. So let's talk about that quickly. The category is kind of just what kind of thing it is. So is it a bedroom? Is it a void? Is it a ensuite living? It's basically got all of the different kinds of rooms that you might be using. You will see in our next release that it's going to go beyond that. We're going to be having outdoor. You're going to have site, boundary, and also total living area. So you can calculate, your entire first floor, second floor, etc., rather than doing it just room by room. Anyway, I'll show some strategies how you can get around that as we go through. And then the label is obviously what you want it to call it. So yeah, it might be a bedroom, or a sleeping area, but now what is it? Is it bed 1, bed 2, bed 3? So I'm going to now press submit, and I can start to draw it. Now I'm just going to draw it off to the side so I can show you, and you can draw any shape that you want. Now, when you do it, depending on the scene that you're in or the view, I'm on roof off scene, and in my roof off scene, the room areas and spaces have been hidden. So I could go through my layers and unhide it, but instead I'm just going to click on the all scene. And now you can see that this space, this room area has been created for me. Now, again, I'm using metric. PlusSpec has been set up to metric for me, and that's why it is producing or reading it as a square meter. But if you're using imperial, then it would be at your square feet. Now, at the moment, it doesn't round up, but it is a feature that should be released in the next one. We're going to be making a lot of changes to this tool, so it will be very interesting to hear your feedback. But what it's doing is two things. First and foremost, it's labeling it, and it's giving you an immediate understanding of the space. Secondly, it's giving you the actual visualization of the space. So you can see it in 3D, and that's the reason you're doing the height, because when you're producing a space, you want to know what the overall square meters or square feet are, but also the volume. The volume gives you a lot of ability to do further calculations, for your air conditioning, etc. But also just understanding how it interacts in the model. So if I went now into floor plan 1, we can see that if I zoom out, it does hide the actual volume or the 3D representation, and it reduces it purely to the label. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually just going to delete that. I'm going to go back into floor plan 1. And what I'm actually going to do is just show you how flexible this tool is to use. So I actually don't mind when I'm tracing a floor plan, if I'm doing it after creating the floor plan, to do it in 2D mode. So I'll go into my floor plan 1. And so again, all I am doing is clicking on Space Tool, and now I'm going to nominate my different spaces. And all I'm going to do is use the walls to trace. So I might just keep it at that height. I don't really, you know what, I'm going to change it to that. And this one we'll do is master bedroom. So again, submit. And now all I'm doing is tracing my wall intersections. Now, if you've got lots of different walls that you haven't cleaned up in your 2D drawing, I highly recommend that before you even start modeling your spaces that you hide those. You can see that mine is very clean, very clear, and very crisp. I know what walls are my structural walls and which ones aren't. I've got nothing else in there that's going to impede it or get rid of it. Now, in my floor plan, I'm just going to go back into all. You can see that depending on how you've set up your floor plan 2, your space tool may have been accidentally put at the wrong level. And what's actually happened here is that it's taken it from my section cut level rather than the bottom of my floor. And again, that's no major drama though, because if you really want to, these are separate elements and you can move them up and down. And so again, I can really move it back into or onto my floor plan so that when I'm on my floor plan level, it's now going to read exactly where I want it. Now that doesn't happen all the time. So it's not always going to pick up the section cut. Often it will pick up the bottom of your floor. Now, perhaps the reason why that is happening is that I've hidden my floor itself, the slab group, so it reads as white. So having mastering the layers is really integral for you. And for everyone who's been coming to these webcasts, you'll see that a lot of our webcasts really emphasize the use of layers and the understanding of layers. We've had a lot of users that have asked us about what's the rationale or how are our layers formed and to give us more information about it. So we've finally done so. We've done a blog post. So go to our website, www.plusspec.com, and go to the blog and you'll see it's the latest one discussing layers. Alternatively, you can go to our FAQ page and you can search for layers there and you'll see that we've got an article on it. I'd love to hear your feedback on it. But that's kind of slightly separate. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually just turn my slab group on, which I had previously turned off. And I'm going to now try and do the same thing. So I'm going to now do my next space. And again, for everyone who's sitting there and watching this, if you've got questions, don't hesitate to ask. This one might be bed 2, still bedroom. And now I'm going to start drawing. Now, if you don't press submit, it should remember your changes, but it's going to keep the dialog open. So let's see what that does. So I'm going to, again, simply left click around my walls, making sure I'm watching the little blue dot get formed. And unfortunately, you can see that it hasn't placed it there. But this time I'm going to go into bathroom. And I'm going to put bath. Again, you could label it whatever you want. And I'm going to draw this one. And I will have to retrospectively, in this instance, go back and just lower these into position. So I'm going to close that tool right now. I'm going to go back into the all, and you can see again, it has picked up the section cut plane. So all I'm doing is going back down and locating it on my floor. So when I go back into floor plan 1, you can now see that I've got my bath, my bed 2, my master bed. So it is a very simple exercise of tracing. Now, if I was tracing in the 3D, I've got, because I'm going to be definitely grabbing the bottom points of my walls, you're going to see that it will work. And in actual fact, I actually believe the reason it's picking up the section plane is because I've got the hatching on there. So what it's doing is it's grabbing the end of that hatch. If I turn my section hatching off, it would probably go back to the bottom of my wall. So you might want to play with that. I sometimes I prefer to go into, for example, roof off, and I'll just quickly turn my shadows off. And now if I'm going to go back into the tool, I can just go and 100% locate it in 3D. So in this one, I might call living, and I'm going to go into obviously my living room, and then press submit. And then as you can see, this time I'm going to make sure that I trace. So grabbing a point in my model, for example, maybe maybe I should have done it a little bit separate or different to that, but you can draw any shape you want. So I'm going to go from there to there. I'm going to come out. You know what? I'm going to go into structure here. I think going to frame is probably a little bit easier. We'll come across to there, and I will actually just go all the way across. So you're just using this tool to form the space. And then at the end, when you grab it, you might have been off slightly. You can fix that. Try and be as accurate as you possibly can. When I do my roof off and then I actually make sure that I activate my spaces. And by the way, if you don't know where your spaces are, if you go into your all scene and you select your space, you're going to be able to see under your entity info what layer it's on. So it's room quantities. So again, if I wanted to go into my roof off and activate so I can see my rooms, I just need to go in and activate room quantities. So go down, tick room quantities, and there's probably another part of that. Let's have a look. I'll go back into all. So the first one's room quantities, second one is room area volume. So you need to have both of those ticked if you want them to be there. So roof off, you've got to tick this one, and then you've got to tick room area volume. And now you've got to activate the layer. Now, if I wanted to have my roof off scene remember that, I can just right click and update it. And now you can visualize it and see how it's working. Now, if you haven't been 100% accurate in tracing your walls, then you're going to be slightly off. But for your measurements, it shouldn't really have any major impacts. So I can see here, I've got my living area, and then my last part, I can go put my kitchen in and other spaces, egress, whatever it may be. Because I might nominate that part is really egress, but in reality, it's probably part of my kitchen. And then I've got a little study nook over here. So it's just about going through the tool and just massing it out. Again, if it is picking up those points and it's not placing it exactly, do it in 3D, that's easier. Or alternatively, they are standalone items, so it does not matter if you're moving them up and down after you place them. Now, it's important to know what these are made up of. So again, we discussed that you're getting the actual shape, but you're also getting the text. So the text actually sits on its own layer. So if I double click onto it, you can see that I can select it. So this is the plan layer. And now I can actually move my text around. I can change it if I want to. So it's positioned in the room more aligned or more in the style that I want, more centered, etc. But so you've got that flexibility of just double clicking in, selecting the actual naming, and then changing it. Now, at the moment, although you can push and pull and modify the space tool, it won't actually update the square meters or square feet or volume calc. So if you're doing major changes, we actually do recommend that you just simply quickly retrace so delete the existing room and then just quickly redraw it. In the future, where we are looking to have it to be a little bit more dynamic and parametric, so that if you do make changes, it will automatically update name and the square meters or square feet, etc. I'd definitely be interested to hear from everyone in attendance today if that's something that you think would be useful and that you would like to see. So that's rooms, right? Now, and obviously you can do it per level as well. So if this is breaking it like a room by room breakdown, but if I wanted to know what the overall building envelope was, then again, I can create a separate one. So if I wanted to, I could go back into the space tool. And as I said, in the next release, we'll already have this as an option from the category. I'm just going to use void for now. And I might say total living area. Again, you can call it whatever you want. This tool is supposed to be flexible in the sense that you might have certain things that you need to capture for or in your 2D drawings or in your model and your plans for council or whoever else. And this is hopefully giving you the ability to create whatever you want. So again, press submit. And then if you want to, you could go into structure again, but I'm actually just going to trace from the exterior of my walls. Every council is different. Some want to include the every single wall. Others will be internal only, so from the internal side of the structure. It really depends. So now I've got a total living area of 171.7. In the future, we're looking at to also give the option to auto change your actual measurement, so you can have it to an exact measurement. So it's going to round it up and down depending on your choice. At the moment, it is giving you like 100% exact, so it is going to put those points in there. So I've got 171, and again, I can actually grab this one and I can locate it down, put it in there. It's now part of my model. I've got my overall. So when I'm doing my calculations, I can break it down into all of the different components. I've got my overall, I've got my room by room, and each one gives you the ability to explain your project in a different way. You will notice that we have an actual room areas scene that's generated inside of PlusSpec for SketchUp when you use the scene tool. And many of you have probably not used it before, and this is what it's for. It is so that you can break down your project and look at it via your spaces. And obviously, if you're doing, first floor to second floor to third floor, then it's the same process. I mean, I'm just going to quickly show you, but it would be, you would just have done the exact same thing, but on your second floor. So I'm just going to make a copy, and my second floor, we'll just say it's that much higher. So I've now got my first floor, and when I created that one, I wouldn't have put total living area. I would have called it first floor area. And then this one would be my second floor area. And then obviously I would have broken and traced my other spaces room by room. Now, a lot of people are actually starting to use this tool, those of you who are aware of it, in a really interesting way for feasibility studies. So you might have a feasibility study and it's very generic. It's basically how many rooms can I fit in and what's a very, very inaccurate cost estimate, just a very quick feasibility study. So rather than actually even modeling with the PlusSpec tools, you might even have start modeling space by space. So what the standard rooms would be, what you'd be normally putting in there for your outdoor spaces and stuff like that, especially for multi-story or residential apartments. And you can actually create them, and then when you're going to get a new job, all you do is you grab those spaces, mass them around, push and pull them, organize it, and then you can actually do a one-click feasibility study. So again, although we hate estimating from square meter and square feet, and we really think it's costing every single one of you time and money, again, for these very preliminary feasibility studies, I can see the value. So the way that you actually can price your different spaces is actually via the category. Category being bedroom, living, kitchen, dining, bathroom, space, outdoor, etc. And you can give a square meter or square feet rate. So the way that you do that is you can simply select everything in your model if you want to. I normally do. I think it's good best practice. And then click on the dollar sign. So the dollar sign is the pricing tool, and it gives you the ability to basically select everything that you've selected now appears in the price settings. So now what I can do is if I don't know where things are located, I can even click on the Find Me, so it takes me there and I can see it. But I'm just going to quickly go through and set price. I've done a very quick one already for my bathroom. So I can click set price. Actually, I haven't. So I might know, and again, I'm just going to use whatever. It doesn't really matter. And by the way, you've got two prices. You can actually price it via the cubic meter or square feet, square meter. So area or volume. Be aware of it. I wouldn't recommend that you would calculate or do any pricing for the volume. That instead you'd just be using the area. So bathroom area set price. I've put it there for 3,000, and that includes, labor and whatever. I'm not going to split it up into two separate sections. So I've just simplified it. If I go into my bedroom, I think I've already done one there. Yep. Okay. So you can see that obviously the bathroom is more expensive than the bedroom, but again, these are made up prices. So now living room area, I might say, well, that's actually, yeah, done. And then what else do I have left? I've got this void area, which is actually my overall. I'm not going to worry about doing that one. So now what I'm going to do is say save and update price data. Press OK. Now PlusSpec will remember this forever after. So every time now that you draw with a living room or a category being the bedroom or the bathroom or whatever, it will remember it. So you don't have to re-enter these prices every time. And that means that if I'm in the room and areas scene, it's only, and I click on the takeoff or the bill of material, it's only going to give me that. So I'm going to click on it. That is now opens my bill of materials and my takeoff. And obviously it is giving me obviously my areas and my volumes. But I have 4 bedrooms and I have of a total size, and I know what I've put the price in per square meter in this case, but obviously if you're using square feet, it'd be in square feet, and I've done it for every single space. So I can get an estimate right now of, and I've put everything under supply, it doesn't matter. In other words, labor and standard costs, install costs, etc., or buy costs. So I can very quickly have an understanding as a very preliminary basic feasibility study that for me to do this job, it's going to cost that much money. And if I really wanted to, I could start going in there, and if I'm a builder, I can say, well, what's my margin for that? Hopefully you're aiming for about 30%. And there you go. That's what you'd be quoting for that job, again, as a very basic output. It's very, very powerful, and it's very, very quick. Now, again, in the future, one of the things that we're thinking about doing is giving you the ability to choose a color for each of your different categories too. So if you are going to represent them in 2D, you can create your keys or your legends. Be interested to know if you think that's a good idea as well. So please give us feedback on this tool. Send us and write in the questions of how you would like to see it improved. And then obviously don't hesitate to reach out to me. Obviously, we at RubySketch, we develop PlusSpec in an agile way. And that means we don't just do one big update at the end of the year. We do approximately 2 to 3 major updates per year. So we are constantly updating, and about 60 to 70% of our updates come from our users and those of you who are proactive. So don't keep your mouth, don't stay quiet. If there's something that you need to see improved or there's something that you would love, reach out to me. Okay, so that's just a quick overview on the space tool. So how you can go through and trace your plan, you can move your spaces and have it located inside of the model. Obviously, I can go back into the OR scene, and I don't have a first floor, so I can simply delete those ones. But you can, because you can visualize where you've located your spaces, I can also see, for example, that I haven't even started to put in my space for my study nook or my kitchen. So obviously I'm missing that. It becomes pretty apparent, right? So I don't recommend at this stage that you push and pull, because it's not going to update your square meters or square feet. So if you did want to change, for example, your living and have it come out in a different way, I would delete it and then just quickly redraw it. As you can see, it's pretty fast. And then obviously we've gone through how then you can create those estimates, those really basic estimates for those very quick feasibility studies. And we think it's far better than any other kind of way that you've been doing it to date, most likely. But now the next thing I really want to talk about with this tool is how you can use it beyond just calculating your square meters and square feet and doing your feasibility studies, but how you can really start explaining setbacks and boundaries and building envelopes. So I'm just going to quickly open up the questions and just see if anything's come through yet. Okay, I can see a bunch of questions coming through. So we will be doing a Q&A at the end, and we'll go through those very shortly. But I just want to quickly jump into how you can start changing this and changing the way that you use this tool. I'm going to open this example here. It's from an architect in Western Australia. And as you can see here, this is a multi-dwelling example, like an apartment complex. And they're doing two things here. So obviously they've generated the site. They've got they've even mapped out all of the surrounding buildings so they can do the sun study and show impact on the other buildings. But you can see that there is a building envelope, and this particular building envelope is, I believe, max setback, including height. And that's why the height aspect of this tool is really interesting, because again, often when we're communicating to council or regulatory authorities, they're reading 2D plans, and many times you're going to get a rejection because they just don't understand what you're trying to do. And when you're giving a 2D plan, it becomes very easy to interpretation. So you can start to really see the worst rather than the best of a design. And I mean, like, for example, if you've gone above the height. So often if you go above the height, you'll get a council or the authority coming back saying, no way, horrible, can't do that. That's our maximum height. And the argument becomes very difficult when you're relying on traditional ways, 2D. Get out of it. We've had massive success stories from our customers that are starting to say that they're actually sitting down with council or sending council 3D models and explaining the project visually in 3D with the site setbacks, with the boundaries, with the envelopes, and there might even be notes attached to this using the tag tool, so that when you're sitting there, you can just open it and you can have the explanations already even assigned or put into the model. But so, for example, you're sitting there with the council and you're saying, look, this is the max. This purple box represents the max building envelope for this site. But you can see here that we've gone beyond. We're above it. But I can even tell you how much we're above it because I can tape measure directly from it. So we're 1 meter above the actual max building envelope. But it's only for a parapet wall and for the staircase. Everything else in the project is below that. And yes, we have this open outdoor space, roof space at the top. But as you can see, the vast majority of that is covered and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can go into any level of, that's where the sales side of things come into play, how you can sell your design. But selling your design, in my opinion, you need the 3D model, especially when you're talking to council and people that aren't really going to have necessarily the skills to pull apart your project and really understand it. Same with color, texture, all of those kinds of things. So, I mean, that's a slightly separate topic. But when you're sitting there with council and when you're just showing them real brick, real actual materials, etc., often the concerns that they have, if you've just got a black and white piece of paper in front of them with these squiggly lines, they can be explained to the council, and you can start saying, well, you know, you're saying that you don't want red brick in any of your precincts, but I'm showing you the way it looks, and you could even model some of the other projects and show the materials that they're having and explain why it works. So in this particular case, it can be very beneficial before you even start playing around with your design to actually model your maximum building envelope, as well as your actual site envelope. So I'm going to give a quick example of that too. I'm just going to hide that one. And yeah, okay. So this particular project doesn't have site or anything like that. So I didn't actually put any of those constraints in there. But I think I actually have one open, so bear with me. I'm just going to try and open it. Okay, so I'm going to open this one for you and then you'll be able to see my screen. Cool. All right. So I've loaded this project here, and this one now is talking about how this tool itself can be a great tool in understanding the constraint of the site. And I would recommend that you would use this tool even before you start modeling, especially to capture your boundary, your setbacks, etc. So in this one, I've modeled the site itself, and then I've actually modeled the boundary separate to it. If I wanted to, I could use the SketchUp sandbox tools, and I could even drape the boundary onto my site so that it's there. But I do like to separate my contours versus boundary, etc. So I'm not going to do it. And instead, all I'm going to do is I know that that's my site boundary. So I'm going to go into my space tool or my room quantities tool. Again, I'm using the void category, but in the next release, you'll have site. And in this one, I'm just going to type site. Press submit. And we might in here know what the maximum height is for this one. So it might be, say, 6 meters if I'm talking in metric. And I can then simply go around this line, tracing and making sure that I'm being accurate. So obviously it's coming off on an angle, just making sure I'm grabbing those points. And now I've created my sites. So I even know now what my actual site is. All right, 200, yep, 2230, but I'm not going to get too caught in there. And now it's actually a really interesting tool too, because before you even start modeling, you can go around and you can start placing it in the site. Now I'm going to hide the boundary just so I don't see that. Make sure it's assigned to that in the first place. And so before you even start modeling your project, you can get a really good understanding of the levels and where you want your project to even sit. So it is pretty useful in that way. So I might come up and then say, okay, I want it to be like that, but what does that do? Maybe I'll come up a little bit more, and I know that I'm going to have a lot of fill in there. I'm going to have retaining walls or a plinth or whatever. So it automatically makes you start thinking about what can I do with this space just by having your overall site. Now, once you've got your site in there, you're going to have your setbacks. And so you can use the tape measure tool to start putting in those setbacks. So you might know that from the front part of the project, you've got a 5 meter setback. And then from the rest of the sites, you've got a 2 meter setback. And excuse me, I am obviously talking in metric. So I'm going to say, well, we can do a parallel 2 meters, and we'll do that one parallel 2 meters. So now I've got my setback. And so if I really wanted to, I could now create another space tool, and I do this because it does become quite useful. And I'm going to, again, use void. And this time I'm going to put setback or boundary, whatever you want to call it. Press submit. And then now I'm just grabbing my boundary that I've put in, like so. And now I've got my second one. I can then grab my the tape measure lines. I don't really want them in there anymore. And now I've got my overall setback too. And so that's the actual allowable buildable area. Again, I can even move this up and down and place it. And obviously I can start generating my scenes, which I haven't done yet. And in my scenes, I can create scenes that, number one, it just shows the actual site, and number two, a second one that's showing the actual boundary. So you can build up these scenes for your 2D drawings. So again, to create your scenes, and I think the vast majority of you here, you've done this probably 1,000 times. You just choose the scenes that you want, press submit, PlusSpec does the rest of the work, and it's going to generate those 2D drawings and 3D drawings for you. Again, they are just there as templates, so you're going to want to add your own. So I don't have, I've got a site plan one at the moment, but I might want to duplicate this one and then again, obviously go down into my layers, and I can turn on my room quantities to make sure that the ones I want displayed are being displayed. Now, if this is site plan, I'm going to just quickly update that. And whilst I'm in the site plan, I can go into my scenes and I can plus. So I'm duplicating my site plan, and this one might be boundary or setback. If you want that, you might not even want to put it in. You might not even create a scene. It might just be good to have it in there. But now you've got it, and you can actually then specify these, hide the ones that you don't want, update the scenes. Remember, as long as I remember the hidden geometry, you're fine. So I'm going to do the same to that one, update it. I'm going to go to this one. That one's cool. I don't want that one in this one. So I'm going to update it. And then in the site plan, we're going to do the same. So you can go through and manipulate or mass out the constraints of your site so that when you're starting to model right from the very beginning now, if you've come in and you can explain, well, here is my setback, but as I'm drawing and modeling this project, I might decide that I want part of my walls that come out a certain amount. And then I can very quickly and easily explain that to council or to the local authority so that I can show that although I am bending the rules in certain locations, it's all within the constraints and I can push the constraints. And there's no better way to do that other than visually. So look, that is the tool. It's a pretty simple tool, but you can do a lot to modify it. The last thing that I want to show you is that you can click on one of the spaces, and if you wanted to, you can start to change the color too. At the moment, it's been assigned this transparent kind of purple texture, but if you want to create a different one for one of the, like for example, the setback, then you can go into your colors. I'm using Mac, but on the PC, it looks a bit different, but similar. And then you can simply grab the one that you want, and then you can paste it on. And then you'll just want to make sure that your transparency is set to, so 45, and I'll just click it on there. So now you can also separate the difference between your different spaces. So you can have your site setback, everything else that you need in there. Cool. All right, so I'm going to just get out of that and I'm going to go back into here. And yeah, I'm now going to go into a Q&A. So I do see that there's a lot of questions coming through. So if you haven't asked yet, please do so now. Before we launch into the Q&A, I just want to launch another poll though. So just bear with me as I load that. All right, I want to get your feedback. I want everyone that comes along to be involved and to help us choose what we're going to be talking about. So our next topic is going to be alterations and additions workflow. So we're going to be talking about how you create projects with alterations and additions which go through proposed, existing, and demo. So I'm really interested to hear from you if that sounds like it's something that you're interested in or not. So is it? I'm getting the votes coming now. About 60% has been completed. I'm going to wait a little bit longer. I've got a few of you who haven't voted yet. Guys, come on, be proactive and active and take part. It helps us kind of understand what webcasts really stand out and what you want to see more of. Okay, we're pretty much there as 100%. So I understand that some of you are probably working as you're listening, etc. So I'm actually going to close the poll. All right, so we've got a couple. I think one of you is the man off of me. We've got a couple of sounds okay, and we've got a few of you saying that you're super interested. So we're definitely going to do it. Thank you for participating in that poll. All right, let's go into Q&A. We will be doing more pricing and estimating webcasts in the future. There's a few things that we're waiting for before we go in and dive into that. So for everyone that we've had a lot of requests for estimating and bill of materials or quantification, they will come. Just bear with us whilst we kind of prepare for them. So site works and how to create terrain. So we will be doing site contour and site modeling very shortly. If you are wanting to do pricing for site works, then please use the tag tool. That's what the tag tool is there for. I wouldn't necessarily say that you would turn your site into I wouldn't BIM it, no way. Rather, what I'd be doing is going into the BIM MEP tool and clicking on the tag tool. And the tag tool enables you to visually locate various elements that you want people to visualize, but you don't need to model them. And so there's various things from comments to cost to office safety time. You just go through them. And as you can see, we did have a question before about build time before we actually launched the session. And there is actually a build time tag. So make sure you go into the tag tool and check out our tags. The tag tool is very underutilized. It's great for internal communication. It's also great to assign tasks to yourselves and make sure that you don't forget things. Because when you place a tag, if it's showing red, it means it's not complete. They're also date and time stamped. You can assign them to people, and it's an amazing tool if you are, for example, an architect or designer and you're working with your builder and you're both using PlusSpec. It means you can capture those RFIs or questions and account for things in there. But as far as cost, etc., you can go in and you can start to say, well, there's complexities, difficult to draw, or maybe you're going into safety and you're saying, well, I have to allow a excavation and trenches tag because we're going to have a lot of excavation along this area. And when you place it in the model, you're placing it in the location that you want to allow for that pricing and to make everyone aware of it. Once you've placed it in there, you can see it's been visualized. If it's shown as red, it means it's not complete. And you can change the status as you go. So at the moment, it's urgent, important. It's not even in progress, and it's not complete. Risk level, what is it? And if there is a risk level, and then I can assign it to people. I can add notes, and people can reply back to those original notes, etc. And obviously, then you can allow for pricing. And then when you do that, it will form part of your bill of materials and your estimate. So the tag tool is really powerful when you're trying to estimate or quantify things that you might not necessarily be able to model or want to model. Not sure what that means, work on historic buildings. Can you let me know what you meant there, Mark? Can the room category naming be edited? No, unfortunately, at this stage, it is static. Most of the options there, especially in the new release, will give you everything that you need. If there are certain things, at the moment, if you can go through and check it out, you'll see that there are all of the different room types. And we'll be adding in the boundary sites, outdoor, and I think there's one other in there. So if other than that, if there's something that you think needs to be in the category, please let us know. The categories need to be static because that is what forms the actual takeoff or your bill of materials. But obviously the naming is how you can control it, so it goes beyond the category itself. But please let me know if there's more categories that you think that we need in this tool. Yeah, okay, that's a really interesting one, Linda. You've said that you're working on heat loss calcs, and I'm wondering about room volume and total house volume without angles for total volume. This tool is perfect for volume calcs. So when you click on your takeoff, you're going to have the volume calc or the volume calc there, which means that you can start applying whatever mathematical equations you need to as far as volume. So how you understand heat loss. It's also used for understanding how much or what kind of power air conditioning you need. And you can obviously do that via your square meters and square feet too, but volume is really, really important. It's a missing aspect often when people are doing those basic calcs to understand what do I need for heat. And that's even for warming it up. So when you understand a volume for a space, you understand how much heat you need to warm it up and obviously how much you need to cool it. So very powerful for that. Meant to ask about odd roof pitches and angles in the ceilings to determine roof volumes. Okay, so when you're actually drawing the the actual space or the volume, you'll see that it comes just at one height. In the future, as I said, we're going to give you the ability, hopefully, to push and pull. I think that's really the only missing part of this tool, so that you can use the SketchUp tools to move certain parts and give it angles, or even change your mind and add parts to it, and it will automatically update your calculations. So I think that's that. Yes, to that. At the moment, you can't, but have a play with it anyway. Like, draw it, adjust it, and you should find that you'll get the volume anyway. Because as long as you've got an object inside of SketchUp, turn it into a group. As long as you've got an object, you should see that when you click on it and you enter the info, it's giving you your volume. So I don't have time to check it now, but I have a feeling that if you just kept on double clicking into the volume, into the space, and you changed the height or whatever, I actually, unlike the square meter or square feet, I wouldn't be surprised if the volume changes. So check that out and let me know. There's a fair bit of lag between what I was doing visually and on screen. Yeah, look, apologies for that. It really depends on your internet connection, my internet connection, and everything in between. If you experienced a lot of lag, please actually watch the video that you get sent out automatically for registering or for coming along to the live session, and you shouldn't have any of that lag. When you are tracing, are we picking up every single wall or length and width? It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. So in the, if I go into my roof off, when I'm actually tracing, and it also depends on your local, your region, your country, your council. It's a funny one when you're doing room calcs. Some authorities will say that you actually need to go from structure to structure. And others say that you actually, for every single room, you should be capturing the entire wall. So it really depends on what you're needing to do. But when I'm tracing, all I'm doing is I'm literally choosing the point in the wall that I want to trace and just moving around. So again, I could even do it in 3D above the room if I wanted just to trace above, and then I could lower it into position if I wanted to. So for me, when I'm drawing in and I'm tracing, it depends on what I'm trying to do. If I was trying to do the overall volume, again, it depends on your local authority and what they want you to calculate. For me, I just went from the outside walls all the way around, and that was my entire living space. Others, or some architects and designers and builders, you may be able to get away with actually calculating your total living space from the internal side of your walls. It's an interesting debate. It's very similar to dimensioning from structure to structure and finish to finish. I think a lot of people do it incorrectly. So it's something that you need to dive into and have a look from your area. Yeah, look, so at the moment, hopefully I showed you that, Charles, that you can manually go through and change the different rooms or spaces with a different color. However, I personally agree with you. I think it would be great if in the drop-down menu, you could assign a category a certain color, because obviously if you're going to create your 2D drawings, it means that you're going to be able to very easily represent it on the page and distinguish between each space, and then obviously have a legend off to the side to explain it. So hopefully we see that in the future. Yeah, again, we had a question about category names. Unfortunately, they are stuck. So that's something that we might look into, see if we can actually give you a little bit more flexibility there. But again, I think we've covered most of the areas. Please, if you think that there's something that's missing, reach out to me and let me know. Okay. Can the estimating and room areas space tool be used to do square meter estimates on plans drawn by others, or only PlusSpec generated drawings? You can do it in anything. If you get sent a CAD drawing and you import the DWG inside of PlusSpec for SketchUp, you don't have to draw using the PlusSpec tools. You could simply imagine, I'll do it off to the side. Imagine this is something that I've brought in and it's just the outline of the building, whatever. Obviously, this is grossly simplified. But I could now just sit there and say, okay, I've brought in my CAD drawing, that's the outline of my plan, rather than putting in all my walls, etc. All I'm going to do is go into my space tool, and then I'm going to create like overall living. So again, I might say total living, choose my height, press submit, draw it. All I'm doing is tracing the CAD or those lines that I brought in. I've now generated, if I go back into all, my overall, I've now got my total living. And obviously if I click on it and click on the pricing tool, it's going to give me the ability to just associate a price to this. So I might say my total living, and at the moment I'm just bypassing this by saying void, but we will have a distinct category for this in the next release. But anyway, I might say that overall I need to charge, 3,500 a square meter or square foot set price, and then save it. And now, obviously, if I do my kickoff, I've now got a price that's just on that. So yeah, but look, we don't recommend it because we're now doing guest speaker. So architects from Mars, builders from Venus series. If you haven't been tuning in, we've done one already. We've got another one coming up, and it's really interesting. It's one of those things that people want to do because it's quicker and easier, but it creates so many problems. I'm not even going to go into it too much here. That being said, I just want to counter that by saying I can see why in some instances you want to, but I'll just say, please make it very feasibility study. We hate doing any form of calculation from square meter, square feet. Okay. We've got a hell of a lot more, so I'm going to do my best to go through a few more. Okay, so Miles, your question as far as alterations and additions and variations with pricing, that will be in a pricing webcast that we'll do in the future. But if you've got alterations and variations, number one, it's going to, you can capture it in the actual tools themselves. So if you're doing demo, you can actually calculate demo already, and you guys will see that next week. But again, you can use the tag tool. So use the tag tool for anything that you might want to quantify or estimate, but you can't necessarily model it or show it in the model. It's super powerful. Yeah, the space tool can do any shape. So I was just showing you a square, but I mean, you can draw whatever you want. I mean, I might have drawn a polygon and as a reference, just so I've got a guide, but I'll show you how you can do literally any shape that you want. And press submit, and then you can simply trace it, and it will allow you to draw any shape on the plan itself. So like so, or I could just go off and draw something completely random, like so. Now, again, the only constraint being with changing heights, etc. But play around with that because again, wouldn't be surprised if the volume changes if you modify it. It's just that the square feet and square meters won't. Can't give you a time frame on the next update. It was already supposed to be out about 3 weeks ago. Unfortunately, we got delayed because we had a few bugs. So we don't want to release something too prematurely. We have to make sure we do our due diligence and make sure it's error-free. So that's what we're doing right now. We hope it's as soon as possible. It should have already been out. I'm confused regarding height setback. Are we able to convince authorities saying what? Is there a different name to it, exceeding height, etc.? Yeah, so I mean, that becomes a sales strategy. I normally suggest that if you're actually dealing with council and you've got a lot of things such as height that are outside of your boundary, that you would make a meeting with them, whether it be a one-on-one meeting with them or an online meeting, and it becomes more of a sales pitch verbally and obviously you can see it and they can see it in 3D. Rather than trying to create any additional geometry or color or, just plan explanation. So it really depends on how you work with your authorities, though. So you could create a secondary void or a secondary space saying, and turn it red and say, this is the parts of my model that are exceeding height, and call it height. And then you've got an additional calculation to say, we've only got, 10 square meters or 15 square feet that are beyond your requirements, and we believe that that's fine. It really does become a sales strategy. So 3D forms, again, you're going to have to trace around a plan and create it in the plan, but you can create height. But if any of you wanting to have like a pyramid object and stuff like that, you'd have to go in and adjust it. So again, volume might be configured, but ultimately the square meter square feet won't. If you've got something else that you mean as far as drawing a shape in 3D, let me know. Great. Look, that's everything. I've managed to get through the vast majority of questions today. We've only gone slightly over. It is a simple tool. I've tried to showcase how powerful it is, though. Again, if you've got any questions or if you've got ways that you want to use it in the future, don't hesitate to reach out, be proactive, be part of change, because you can have a hand in how we develop PlusSpec. And for everyone who attended today, thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks.